Hello everyone, welcome to another session on Answer Framework Analysis by Bajirao IAS Academy. We have been discussing previous year questions and the structure of the answers, right? All the questions which we are going to discuss are very important for state PSC examination and also UPSC examination. Given here is the question which is being related to COVID-19 pandemic. How COVID-19 pandemic has brought a paradigm shift in global economic and strategic order. In this question, we will analyze the 5 important lessons we have learned so far from the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we all know that how COVID-19 pandemic has brought tremendous and remarkable changes in every one of our lives. Okay? Therefore, COVID-19 pandemic has created a large-scale changes, not just in the individual life, but also in the society and in the global level as well. It has also changed the strategic aspect of the global order. Now, in this context, we need to understand that COVID-19 pandemic has brought global health crisis. Okay, it has brought global health crisis. We all know about the large-scale mortality that took place because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This can be categorized as a global health crisis that the world has never seen since last 1 century. In this context, it is important to understand the negative consequences of such pandemic and what lessons we could learn from a pandemic like this. Now, when you are writing introduction for this question, you just briefly give a description about the COVID-19 pandemic. How it has created a large-scale changes in the society. So, if this introduction says COVID-19 pandemic is not just a global health crisis, rather it is a catalyst for reimagining the way we want to live going forward. While we are going forward next 1 decade, 2 decades, how we are reimagining ourselves. Now we are living in an era where the pandemics have become a common phenomenon. Zoonotic diseases have been spreading at a fastest pace. For example, we talk about the Zika virus regularly. Okay, Zika virus is also one form of a zoonotic disease. Since there is a lack of sustainable uh, living patterns, there's a large scale origin of these pandemics. In this context, from the economic system to sustainable development, decision makers have an opportunity to move away from the status quo. Now, as of now, we have been maintaining status quo with respect to these pandemics. However, COVID-19 pandemic has provided an opportunity for the world to come up with new ideas, new decisions, that could completely change the way we are looking at the environment, the way we are looking at the global health systems. Ultimately, when we reimagine ourselves, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, those lessons can be used for positive changes and they ultimately benefit mankind. Given here, you can see how COVID-19 has brought a tremendous change in the society. Now, people started wearing masks and social distancing has become a norm. Lockdowns have become a common phenomenon across the world. Earlier, globalization was the major phenomenon behind the economies of different countries. Now countries switching over to protectionism. closing borders. So these are all the features of the COVID-19 pandemic. So even during the COVID-19 pandemic, you have seen the worsening ties between US and China. So in fact, US former President Donald Trump openly accused China of spreading the coronavirus pandemic to artificially bring down the economic growth of other countries so that China can grow at a rapid pace compared to the other countries. And this has also led to trade war between US and China. So we have all seen how trade war has impacted not just US and China but also other developing and emerging markets. So this is an unprecedented change that has been brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the question which is asked about 5 important lessons of this COVID-19 pandemic that has brought global economic and strategic order, significant shift or paradigm shift. So as part of this answer, we will try and understand all those 5 changes or all those 5 lessons that we are going to learn. So first and foremost, one lesson is we need to depend more on evidence-based policy making, evidence-based or data-driven policy making. So because we very often come across fake news, consequences of fake news. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic also, there were fake news about the vaccine efficacy, and that ultimately led to vaccine hesitancy. Vaccine hesitancy among people. Therefore, the lesson which we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is that there should be evidence-based policy making. So what happens with the evidence-based policy making? The decisions are taken by the data, available evidence, so that those decisions will give results, and those results will certainly help overcome a wide variety of challenges, whether it is related to economy, social challenges, challenges with respect to healthcare sector, and challenges while dealing with such pandemics. Okay, so therefore, the first and foremost lesson we have learned is evidence-based decision making. So this is very important. So the world should be ruled with facts. Okay, so facts, data, logical decision making, rational decision making are very important because so as we have seen how some governments have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. So there are different uh, countries, and their response to COVID-19 pandemic uh, indicates that how efficient the policies are in order to curb their respective crisis, health crisis. For example, if you look at the developed countries, the developed West, they were not able to control the mortality because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But on the other hand, countries like India, they have performed better when it comes to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so this we have witnessed how different states have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. So whenever decisions are made in the absence of facts, they will have far-reaching implications for the economy and society. For example, imagine a country, imagine a government without considering data, the existing data and evidence, they've made a decision to lockdown, impose lockdown for an indefinite period of time. So imposing lockdown for an indefinite period of time without having data and evidence to show that imposing lockdown will help curb the pandemic, will help curb the spread of the disease. Okay, that could have a detrimental impact on the economy. So the economic activities will not take place when lockdown is being imposed. And when people who are under lockdown, you know, domestic violence takes place against women in the families, and people constantly develop stress, a psychological stress, anxiety, fear, unemployment. Okay, so this could have a serious implications on the society and individuals, and even on the economy. So therefore, we need to emphasize more and more on data and evidence-based policy making. And in this evidence-based decision making or evidence-based policy making, the public and private sectors need to play very crucial role. Okay, so when they work together in a collaborative manner, okay, so that could be resulted in formulating important decisions, and they create impact, especially during the times of crisis. So whenever a crisis has emerged, either pandemic or any other disaster, not the responsibility should not be on the shoulders of either public sector or private sector, only public sector or only private sector or only civil society, but everyone should be worked in a collaborative manner. All the stakeholders should be engaged in order to deal with any of such crisis. So therefore, the first lesson is we need more evidence-based decision making. So next, health and economy are always interlinked. So we should not de-link health and economy. We should not look separately health and economy. So both are interlinked. So this is being evident from the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is the second lesson that we have learned, that health and economy are interlinked. Okay, so in this context, please understand population health is vital pillar of strong economy. So imagine a country, for example, India, with around 65 percentage of its population in demographic dividend. Okay, in the demographic age of working age population, 65 percentage of its population. Now, when is not taken care, health is not taken care properly, then even though majority of the population in the working age, it could not result in a significant economic gains for any country, not just for India, but for any country. So therefore, population health is a vital pillar of strong economy. When a population is healthy, that results in a wealthy economy, more inclusive development, inclusive growth, economic development. So that is the essence. And COVID-19 pandemic has made us realize the importance of population health, infrastructure on health care. Now, COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the lack of public health infrastructure in many countries, especially countries like India, where we have not been investing significantly in the public healthcare sector. So just below 2% of GDP is spent on healthcare sector. So even though National Health Policy of 2017 has recommended that the total spending on healthcare sector should be 3% of GDP. So still we are spending below 2% of GDP on healthcare sector. So if we focus more on healthcare sector, if we ensure universal health coverage for the population, that could directly improve India's performance. Economic performance. So therefore, population health is a vital pillar. So if you look at the total cost of the population, total cost of the pandemic at the global level, on the global economy, it is around 8% so this is a huge cost that is being uh, imposed on these countries because of the pandemic. Now, in fact, reports from several international organizations like World Bank, International Monetary Fund, so they have been saying that to recover from the losses of the pandemic, it will take another 20 years. Okay, so it will take another 20 years to recover from the pandemic. So you can imagine the scale of damage that is being caused to the economies because of the COVID-19 pandemic. See, whenever you are writing an answer, it is always advisable to write data. Okay, so in those points, you have to write data and examples also to substantiate your answers. So when you write data and examples, those answers will not look generic. So they look specific and they attract the attention of the examiner and will help you score more marks than your fellow candidates. And that is the essence of securing a good rank. So the third point is that poor population health. So in case population has poor health, so that costs economy twice as much. Okay, so even if workforce not participating in the economy, that is okay. But workforce is poor, that costs the economy twice. So therefore, population health is a very important aspect. We need to focus on health of the population. We should provide universal health care. At the same time, providing universal health care, we should focus on reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure. Reducing out-of-pocket expenditure. So because of high out-of-pocket expenditure, it is a disincentive on the part of population that even if they are infected with a disease, they don't consult a doctor, right? So therefore, universal health coverage is very crucial. So imagine if population lack health or they have poor health, that could lead to premature deaths and loss of productive years. Okay, so that an economy like India cannot afford. So therefore, the second lesson that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is that health and economy are interlinked. That we should not, neglect public health, whether it is at the local level, national level, or at the international level. A concerted program is necessary in order to protect the public health at the largest scale. So, in the post-COVID world, health needs to be repositioned as an investment and not just a cost. Now, in majority of the countries, healthcare is being seen as a cost, expenditure being incurred by the government. So rather, it should be seen as an investment. Why it is seen as an investment? Because it has a direct impact on the country's economy. So how we have been investing in technology, how we have been investing in infrastructure development, research and development. In a similar sense, if we invest in healthcare sector, that should be seen as investment, not just a cost, right? So this is the second lesson. And the third lesson that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is about the need for larger global cooperation. So larger global cooperation is necessary, particularly facing such crisis. Okay, so if there is no cooperation at the larger scale, then the goal of equity cannot be achieved. Why? Because there are several developed countries, so they have the necessary resources and technology. Okay, so they have necessary resources and technology with them. On the other hand, there are several poor countries also, underdeveloped countries, least developed countries, and island nations. So they do not have resources and technology. So they cannot meet the challenges which are created by the pandemic. So therefore, we need more global cooperation at the global level. So cooperation in the sense that sharing health data to solving global supply chain issues. So if the world has been facing supply chain issues, then sharing of health data would ensure that those supply chains uh, could be the supply chain issues could be prevented or could be minimized. So, pandemic has reiterated the importance of international cooperation. So, this is a very important. So, please understand how COVID-19 pandemic has reiterated importance on the international cooperation because the World Health Organization and Gavi Alliance, okay, so they have made a significant research in vaccine development and also vaccine equity. So recently a phenomenon got developed. This phenomenon is known as vaccine nationalism. Okay, so what is vaccine nationalism? So vaccine nationalism, what happens is that the developed countries have been procuring more vaccines than they require. Okay, so they generally stockpile these vaccines, but on the other hand, the poor countries have been facing a wide, large scale mortality because they lack access to vaccines. So therefore, these organizations like WHO, UN, and Global Alliance for Vaccine, so uh, you know, uh, they have done a tremendous job ensuring vaccine equity for the poor and underdeveloped countries. And increasing vaccine nationalism or nationalism and declining support for multilateralism. So this is being evident from the fact that protectionism has been developing at the global scale. For example, Trump, the former US president, have started America First policy. America First policy. So he also very often talked about buy American, hire American. So this is a protectionist trend in opposition to globalization or multilateralism. Now we have also seen a phenomenon called Brexit. Britain came out of the European Union. So this is also the result of protectionism. And countries like India have also announced Atmanirbhar Bharat programs, self-reliant India programs. So all these factors are evidence of declining support for multilateralism and increasing nationalism. So therefore, in this respect, in order to tackle any of these, crisis situations or any of these pandemics, international collaboration is vital to tackle these contemporary challenges. Now, international organizations like World Health Organization and United Nations, World Bank, International Monetary Fund. So these are financing institutions. So they provide finance to public healthcare sector strengthening. So therefore, international organizations will continue to be instrumental in sharing or bringing stakeholders together in achieving the common goals. Now, as I have already told you that bringing all the stakeholders together in order to deal with any challenges is very important. So in this case, international organizations like United Nations, WHO, they provide common platforms bringing all stakeholders together so that appropriate decisions can be made in order to deal with these challenges. So the next lesson that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is global health is a shared responsibility. So when we are talking about the global health, it is not the responsibility of the one particular community, one particular nation, but the global health is a shared responsibility across humanity. So when we talk about global health, it is not just the health of human beings, it is also the health of environment, health of wildlife, both flora and fauna. Okay, so therefore global health is a shared responsibility. This is everyone's responsibility, not the responsibility of one particular country, and that we need to understand. And COVID-19 pandemic has reiterated this theme. Okay, so because if we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, it is a virus. Okay, it is a viral disease, and these viral diseases, they generally spread at a faster pace. So they don't respect national borders. So they don't know national borders. Even the national borders are artificially created. So pandemics have no limits. They can reach to the any extent. Okay, so they don't respect the borders of these countries. And these pandemics require global solution because no doubt it is a global problem. Pandemic is a global problem. So such global problems, whether it is the economic problem or economic crisis, any disaster, a pandemic that requires a global solution. Now, global solution will ensure global collaboration on that particular challenge, so that whenever there is a global collaboration, it could be better for the countries to come out of the challenge at a much faster pace. Because what happened is that whenever they have the shared responsibility, so that also implies shared resources, shared intelligence, data sharing between all these countries. So global solution is appropriate for a global problem. Therefore, in this context, it is the responsibility of the every nation to prioritize public health for the benefit of humankind. So, as I already told you, India has been spending less than 2% of GDP on public healthcare sector. So, there is a need to increase India's public healthcare sector spending to more than 3% of GDP. So spending on healthcare sector should not be viewed as a cost alone. Rather, it should be viewed as investment. Okay, it should be seen as investment. So there is a need. It is the responsibility of the every nation to prioritize public health for the benefit of mankind or human. Right. So even at the local level, action and inaction can affect the global health. Now, see, uh, it is not enough that taking action at the global level, but it is also important how the people have been responding at the local level. A small act at the local level will reflect at the global level as well. So, if at the global level commitments have been decided, but this inaction at the local level, that would not give any significant results. Okay, so therefore, even at the local level, the global health care, uh, you know if we take action or inaction that affect the health at the global level. So these are the four key lessons that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore, when you are writing a conclusion for this answer, you just have to emphasize on the need for the greater global collaboration and following the policies like One Health approach. Okay, what is the One Health approach by World Health Organization? So this One Health approach by World Health Organization has been emphasizing on both human plus animal health. Okay, so therefore we need to ensure One Health along with meeting all the sustainable development goals. That is essence of ensuring equity, social justice, and also environmental justice. So this is how you can conclude this answer. Okay. So the next question that we are going to discuss is about the No Money for Terror campaign that was held in India. Okay, so the question is, discuss the need to tighten the noose against terror financing in the light of recent third No Money for Terror Ministerial Conference countering terror financing. See, terror financing is one of the most challenging aspects. Okay, now several countries like India are called as victims of terrorism. Victims of terrorism. Now, cross-border terrorism is being encouraged by the state actors and non-state actors in our western borders. So terror financing has been promoting fundamentalism, radicalism, insurgency. So that threatens security of the state, peace and order. Therefore, countering terror financing is very important. Recently in India, third No Money for Terror ministerial conference was held. Okay, so this is a third No Money for Terror ministerial conference that was being held. So in this context, we need to understand the need to tighten the nose against the terror financing. So why we need to tighten the terror financing, the cap of the terror financing. See, if you remember, this question is asked by Jammu and Kashmir Administrative Services in 2023. Similarly, UPSC also asked this question in mains examination 2023. So therefore, you can imagine how important this question actually is. So this is not just important for mains exam, but for also in your prelims exam, this question is very, very important. Okay, so right. So recently, in introduction, while writing introduction for your answer, you just write a third No Money for Terror ministerial conference on counter-terrorism financing that was held in New Delhi, India. Okay, so this conference was held in New Delhi, India. So, what is the objective of No Money for Terror campaign? So, the overall objective of No Money for Terror campaign is avoiding any ambiguity in dealing with terrorism. Okay, so there should not be any ambiguity among the countries. So, there should be a proper legal architecture, or there should be a proper framework between all those countries who are facing the menace of terrorism. Okay, so when we you know arrest the sources of terror financing, that significantly reduces the incidence of terrorism, fundamentalism, and radicalism. So therefore, this particular conference emphasizes on that there should not be any ambiguity while dealing with terrorism. And this No Money for Terror ministerial conference has also warned against nations that use terrorism as a tool of foreign policy. So we have an example called Pakistan that is being used, that is using terrorism as a foreign policy. Foreign policy. Even several other countries have also using terrorists as their tool in foreign policy in order to promote proxy wars. Okay, so in this terror conference, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been emphasizing that action against organized crime is extremely important in the fight against terror. So, what does this organized crime mean? So, organized crime means that drug trafficking, human trafficking, terror financing. So, all these things comes under the organized crime networks. So, therefore, he emphasizes that action against organized crime is extremely important in the fight against terror. So please remember the third No Money for Terror ministerial conference held in India, New Delhi, India. Right. So what exactly? So what is this No Money for Terror Conference. So what does this mean? So the No Money for Terror Conference was initially started in the year 2018. So okay, so this was initially started in the year 2018. So the initiative that was taken to organize this No Money for Terror conference was French government. So French government started this No Money for Terror campaign, and the No Money for Terror conference especially focuses on cooperation between the countries in order to choke the terror funding. So terror funding is a major concern between all the countries who have been facing the menace of terrorism. So therefore, in order to choke the terror funding, No Money for Terror conference was formed at the initiative of the French government. So this is what the No Money for Terror conference. We have been repeating it multiple times so that you could remember, you could understand what I am exactly saying. So we need to understand the objective as well. Okay. So what is the objective of the No Money for Terror conference in this regard? Okay. So if we look at the objective of this conference, it offers a unique platform for participating nations and organizations, so they deliberate on the effectiveness of the current international regime. Okay. So yes, this No Money for Terror conference is a platform for different participating countries who are the victims of terrorism, and it hosts not just the nations but also different organizations. For example, Financial Action Task Force. So apart from Financial Action Task Force in India, also there are several other agencies like National Investigation Agency, Intelligence Bureau. Okay, so even in the under the Finance Ministry, there are several other finance intelligence units. Okay, so therefore, this organization is a unique platform for different countries and organizations. So what they do, they actually deliberate on the effectiveness of existing international regime or international framework. So how effective the framework at the international level to counter terrorism and terror financing. So therefore they further deliberate on steps required. Okay, so what are the steps that are being taken, that are required to be taken to address the emerging challenges from terrorism? Okay, so this is the overall objective of the No Money for Terror conference. Okay, now in this context, we need to understand the major sources of terror funding. So what are the major sources of terror funding? Now, it is important that we need to understand the major sources. First and foremost, Hawala transactions. Now, Hawala transactions is one of the most important sources of terror funding, and it is also most favorite way of funding terrorist organizations. Why? Because Hawala transactions are very quick and it can be done in a secretive manner. Okay, so money can be transferred in a quick and secretive manner. So because of this reason, Hawala transaction is one of the most favorite way of transferring money to these terrorist organizations. For example, Hawala networks have played key role in funding 1993 Bombay bombings. Okay, so in the year 1993, so there were bombings in Mumbai. So in this particular bombings, Hawala transactions have played key role. So see, whenever you write an answer, in every point, at least you write a data or example. Okay? So if you write data and examples in your answer will not appear or it look like a generic answer. Okay, so this appears your answer is more specific one. Now, after that, we should also talk about the drug trafficking, the menace of drug trafficking. For example, if you look at India's location, okay, so India is located near to the Golden Triangle and the Golden Crescent. So this Golden Crescent is located between Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, and this Golden Triangle is located in Thailand, Laos, okay, and Myanmar. So since India is sandwiched between this Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent, so this region is known for opium production, okay, or notorious for opium production. So opium is produced, and India is being used as a transit hub for transporting drugs to different parts of the world. Okay, from India, you know, in India also large amount of these drugs are being consumed by youth, and from India itself, the drugs are shipped to other countries across the world. So therefore, Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle are known for opium production. Now, opium production is illegal, no doubt about that, but production would give a huge amount of revenue. Okay, so it gives huge amount of revenues and huge amount of money for the people who have been producing and who have been involving in these networks. So therefore, terrorism is being used. Uh, you know, you know, terrorism has playing a very active role in drug trafficking, so that they can earn decent revenues, and that could be used for terror financing. Okay, so if we talk about example, extremist groups like Taliban, they are involved in drug trafficking, and it is also a significant source of funding for these extremist groups in Pakistan. And the third major source of terror funding for these groups is fake currency, counterfeiting notes. Okay, so what they generally do, for example, in countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, so they produce fake currency notes. So these fake currency notes are printed in other countries, and they are shipped to India, and they introduced into the economy. Okay, so this is also another major source of terror financing. So the counterfeiting currency destabilizes the economy, and it funds the criminal enterprises. Okay, so when the counterfeiting currency entering into the Indian economy on a large scale, RBI's monetary policy will become ineffective. Okay, it is dysfunctional. So therefore, fake currency counterfeiting of currency notes is also another major source of terror funding. So after that, we should also talk about cybercrime. Okay, now in recent times, cybercrime has become widespread, rampant. Even terror groups have been using, these virus ransomware for getting money. They are using dark web, dark net. So therefore, the ransomware attacks, and identity theft, they generate huge funds. For example, investigations into the Yuri attack in 2016 revealed involvement of digital transactions to fund the assailants. Okay, so the link between these assailants and terror funding networks has been unearthed by the investigators or investigations. So this is another major source of terror financing. So other major sources include charities and NGOs. In fact, organizations like militant organizations like Jamaat ud Dawa, so they disguise themselves as a charitable entities. Okay, so these charitable entities attract a huge sums of donations. So when they attract such a huge sums of donations, and these donations are being misused to promote or finance terrorist, terror, that money is being used for terror activities or terrorist uh, financing. Okay, so after that, we should also talk about kidnapping and extortion. Okay, so kidnapping and extortion are also another major sources of terror financing or terror funding for that the no money for terror ministerial conference wanted to deliberate. Now, in this context, we should understand the overall objective of No Money for Terror conference. So, what are the objectives of this conference? So, the first and foremost objective is knowledge sharing among all the participating countries and the organizations. So, as we have already discussed, No Money for Terror Ministerial Conference is a platform for different countries and also organizations. So, therefore, the immediate objective of this particular conference was to serve as a platform for countries to share insights, best practices, and intelligence. So that will help in combating these terror financing or terror activities. For example, Israel has used the financial intelligence to dismantle terrorist cells. It can be used as an example or a case study. The second major objective of No Money for Terror conference is resource mobilization. Okay, so to help countries mobilize financial, technical, and human resources and to strengthen their anti or the counter-terrorism efforts. Okay, for example, Australia's countering violent extremism is an example. Okay, so these countries, all these countries have come together. So different stakeholders take part in the No Money for Terror conference, and they mobilize resources, and those resources can be used in counter-terrorism measures. Okay. So next, we should also the next major objective is monitoring and evaluation. For example, the United Nations Counterterrorism Committee Executive Directorate assessment protocols were discussed as a potential global standard. Okay, so there are already different frameworks that are being in place to curb terror financing. So, what No Money for Terror Ministerial Conference do? It actually evaluate and monitor those existing frameworks. Okay, so those existing frameworks and standards. So, though, so therefore, it could further choke the sources of terror funding or terror financing. So, after that, we should also talk about the civil society engagement. Okay, now in any you know in any initiative, it is very important to engage the civil society groups, NGOs, and even the private sector. So they can play key role in surveillance and even action against terror financing. So if we talk about example, the Technology Against Terrorism Initiative involving technology companies, they fight against online extremist content. Okay, so these are the objectives of No Money for Terror conference, and uh, I have also given you examples along with these points. So when you write conclusion for this answer, so how conclusion should be, how it should be. Okay, so combating terror financing is not just a national, but it is a global imperative. Okay, so it is a global requirement or a global need. So therefore, No Money for Terror conference is actually a step in the right direction because it is pulling in resources, pulling in knowledge, sharing best practices and intelligence with all the member countries. Okay, so even at the national level and international level. So that will ultimately help in strangling the financial lifelines of these terrorist organizations or terrorist groups, militant groups, and make the world safer place and make the world a peaceful place. So this is how you need to conclude this answer. Now the terrorist organizations or the terrorist attacks have been increasing. And countries like India are particularly vulnerable because of our complex neighborhood. Whether if you look at the eastern neighborhood, western neighborhood, and even our northern neighborhood, India has been facing extremely complex situation. So in this context, conference like No Money for Terror is very crucial. So this is how you can conclude this answer. So finally, that's it for tomorrow. That's it for today. And in tomorrow, we will discuss few more questions and the basic framework. See, if you regularly follow these videos, you will get to know how to write an answer. So how can you frame an answer? So how can